Welcome back. The trial judge in the case against South African-based Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotosho has recused himself from the case. Judge Mandela Makiyula had been accused of being biased towards the state witness by the defense counsel Peter Doberman. The state counsel also raised concerns that the judge allegedly has financial interest in the accommodation housing state witnesses in the case, an accusation the judge denies, stating that it is his wife who has interest in the said accommodation. Pastor Omotosho and two female members of his church, Lusanda Sulani and Zukiswa Zito, are facing 97 charges, including human trafficking. Judge Makiyula gave reasons for his recusal at the Port Elizabeth High Court today before handing over to Judge President Selby Mbayenenge, who has postponed the case to the 30th of July. Now, here's Judge Makiyula's address in court today.
After several failed attempts by the defense counsel to get the trial judge to recuse himself, it was a concern raised by the state prosecutor, Mteban Telwa, that got Judge Mandela Makiyula to budge. And the judge says it's in the interest of justice and in line with Article 13 of the South African Judicial Code of Conduct, covering grounds for recusal.
Having put the record straight, and once I am of the view that there are no grounds for me to recuse myself, reference to some state witnesses as having been accommodated at a guest house in which my wife has financial interest is a factor which might reasonably give rise to an apprehension of bias and result in an application for recusal being brought. I interpose here too and mention that I am not privy to the information held by the state concerning the accommodation of the state witnesses. Despite that fact, there is no application for me to recuse myself based on this fact. And independently of the opinion of the parties or their legal representatives, I am of the view that the appropriate thing to do is for me to recuse myself, which I hereby do.
With Judge Makiyula out, the matter has now been taken over by Judge President of the Eastern Cape, Selby Mbayenenge, who has postponed the case to the 30th of July.
For what it's worth. Thank you.
It's something that you may need to discuss.
The case is postponed to Tuesday, 30 July 2019, on which date the proceedings shall commence de novo.
Outside the Port Elizabeth High Court, the members of the embattled Pastors Church were present as usual. The spokesman for the Department of Justice, Natin Ngube, explained how Judge Makiyula's likely link to witnesses' accommodation may have been missed.
Because judges are supposed to make some kind of a declaration in terms of their financial interest. So he has indicated that he made that. But that declaration is in his respect, right? So the agency would not have that information. So they look for any guest house, they don't care who owns it, as long as it's compliant with the Treasury guidelines, then they'll make a booking. So none of us would have, I'm not saying that it's not possible for people to do it deliberately if they know, but in terms of the process that was followed, you just look for the most cheapest and available place for accommodation and you book people into that.
From here, we are heading towards number one. We are going to have to know about who is going to be the judge, because the matter is going to be started from scratch now.
The trial starts over, as we have heard. The case resumes on the 30th of July 2019, and the defense counsel Peter Doberman has indicated his intention to oppose a live broadcast of the court proceedings, but not necessarily the presence of the media in court. He also intends to raise objections to the 97-item charge sheet, which he has so far unsuccessfully tried to quash. Meanwhile, Pastor Timothy Omotosho remains in custody while his two co-accused remain on bail. From Port Elizabeth, the Eastern Cape, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Still in South Africa, the police service has launched a manhunt for 2 suspects following a drive-by shooting of a Nigerian in the capital city of Pretoria today. In a statement sent to Channels Television, police spokesman Captain Daniel Mavimbela says a victim, aged 44, was attacked by 2 men a street east of Pretoria shortly after he had dropped off his brother. Reports suggest that the suspects had been trailing the deceased before the attack, shortly after the brother had alighted from the victim's car. The police is reaching out to members of the public who may have witnessed the incident to assist in investigations to either identify or even apprehend the suspects within 72 hours. The motive behind the killing is yet to be determined, but a case of murder is being investigated. Now, many more relatives continue to mourn the death of their loved ones who were victims of the ill-fated Ethiopia plane crash on Sunday. Desperate to know what happened and to receive fragments, if not corpses, given the fire and destruction at the site, relatives were at least able to vent their grief. One woman who lost her brother in the crash said the pain and grief experienced by families had been made even more difficult because they had not been able to hold funerals. In the meantime, French investigators have started work on the black boxes of the plane. The crash on Sunday happened 6 minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa, killing all 157 people from 35 nations. It's the second of such calamity involving Boeing's flagship new model in 6 months. Possible links between the accidents have rocked the aviation industry. Nations around the world, including an initially reluctant United States, have suspended the 737 MAX models in operation. Now, the head of the World Health Organization has set a 6-month target to end the outbreak of the Ebola disease in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Tedros Adhanom said the number of new cases per week is now half of what it was at the beginning of the year. He warns that the areas of Butembo and Katwa remain Ebola hotspots and that insecurity poses a constant threat to efforts to contain the disease.
Of Ebola patients.
One good news is that the disease for the last 7 months has been contained in a geographic area called North Kivu. It hasn't spread to other parts of the country, and it hasn't spread to neighboring countries. I think anybody can agree that this is fact and something that we can say is good news. And the second is not only that it's not spreading, it's actually contracting. In January there were 50 cases per week. Now we have an average of 25 cases per week. So there is a decline of the number of cases per week. Despite the incredibly difficult situation, the outbreak has been contained in 11 out of the 28 communities that have had cases. But when I say that, I don't want also to undermine the risk, because it may again revamp if the situation, the security situation continues to deteriorate.
Well, that's it on the program today. Thanks for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Bye for now.